literally no interactions at all, even one-dimensional, which makes it even like a bigger mystery that this parasocial relationship keeps going. To me, it almost feels like we reached the level of not worshipping a celebrity, but worshipping a fictional character. If you are part of the fandom of Babymetal, you haven't missed that Amuse announced that Yuimetal was leaving their company. So today I want to have a small conversation on Yuimetal and the phenomenon of the group of fans who are still obsessed with her. It's something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, but it's not like a topic that's very like fresh, so I didn't really know, but since I saw the announcement, I was like, okay, it's the right time. Also because I found a paper that has started some research on the link between celebrity worship and loneliness, and I thought it was very interesting and related to the topic of some obsessed Yuimetal fans, so I really wanted to talk about it. This conversation is going to be a bit more casual than the deep dives I did on Babymetal, but bear with me. But first, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Leo. On this channel I do music reactions and deep dives into artists, their albums, the music industry, and I focus on women in alternative, rock and metal music. I became a fan of Babymetal last year, so it's quite recent, and in 2025 I did 2 deep dives on them, first on their story and then a deep dive on their fandom. I work on a concept called fandom analysis where I ask detailed questions to the fans of a specific artist, and that's what I did with Babymetal. Back then I was still discovering the band, so when several people brought up the issue of Yuimetal and the fact that she had left the band but she still had some dedicated fans and that some people in the fandom were kind of taking it out on Momometal, the newer member, I was very intrigued. And so, major news for these people, but Amuse, so the company Yui was signed to, announced that she was no longer with them. So, I don't know about you, but I personally just wasn't expecting a news like that, just because to me it seemed clear that Yui wasn't working with them anymore, but she was just like left on the website. So it just probably means that her contract was still like valid, but now it's done. So let's talk about it. In case you didn't know and you just stumbled on this video out of pure luck, Babymetal used to be Sumetal, Moametal, and Yuimetal. They were signed quite young and they worked together as a trio till 2017. 2017 is the last year that we've been Yuimetal actually. So bear in mind that there hasn't been a public appearance, picture, video, nothing of her since 2017. Like, it's been a long time. Following her departure, they toured and we had some dancers replacing her. Then other members rotated to try and like keep a trio going. And recently, Momometal joined Sue and Moa officially as the 3rd member of Babymetal. Amuse is an entertainment company and Yui was signed to them as a child, and she worked a lot in the entertainment industry and especially in Babymetal when she was just a kid and then a preteen and then a teenager. We have to keep in mind that Babymetal became famous quite quickly, and at some point it really sped up, and like their fame really wasn't like at the scale that it was in the beginning, or that was like probably near people that were around them at this time. And I'm really happy that Sumetal and Moametal adjusted to that, because it must not have been easy, especially like if you take into consideration that at the time Babymetal really exploded and they started to tour really internationally, far from home. They were like between like 16 and 20, you know, so that's like, these years are so hard, I just cannot imagine what it like can do to your brain. But they honestly seem healthy and happy, so I really hope that they are. But you can imagine how one would have a hard time adjusting to this change or fail completely to do this adjustment. In this video, I'm going to pick up some stuff I saw on Reddit to like further the conversation. So I found someone saying, Honestly, the fact that they, Amuse, waited this long to tell us what we already knew for over 5 years ago is kind of sad. She was never coming back, and a lot of us knew that already. Wish her well, but the Amuse handled this overall is pretty screwed up. Someone answered, and I like that. I don't know if we can put the blame entirely on them. Remember, Yui explicitly said in her farewell Babymetal message that she intended to return eventually. It only became obvious she changed her mind later. By that time, she must have re-upped her contract, so all anyone could do was wait for the contract to end. Hindsight is 2020. You'll recall she also dithered on whether to quit Babymetal due to her health issues for nearly a year and only pulled the trigger at the last minute after Starlight was ready to go and their first major Distortion era show in Japan had its ticket sold. The event page even said, "We don't know if Yui will be there, so her taking a long time to decide something is normal." When she announced that she wouldn't be taking part in the tour back then, there kind of was this question of, is her health okay? And then there was also the question of, is she interested in having a solo career? And none of these questions had official answers. We can imagine that she's definitely not gonna have a solo career now, but yeah, these were both kind of floating. But a big question was, is she okay? So I personally started to listen to Babymetal last year. I considered myself a casual fan. I think they are diabolically cool, a very interesting case study of the entertainment industry. They did collabs with artists that I love, and I was so excited to see them. So I just really think it's funny to talk about the band, study them, listen to them. Like, overall, it's a good time. But I'm a casual fan, and when I started diving into their history for my deep dive on them, I was very intrigued by Yui's departure, even though I became a fan of the band 7 years after she was last seen publicly in it. And I think that the casual fans like me can share this kind of interrogation, but the very dedicated fans who were like a huge fan of them when she was still in the band can take this question more to heart. And unfortunately, I think that the little information we have on how she left and how everything happened is fitting into people's interrogation and is also ground for some conspiracy theorists to make shit up. I watched Gabby Def Metal's video on Yui, and I think he made an excellent point that worked on reassuring me personally and that I want to share here. Because you kind of have this conspiracy theory that Amuse smothered Yui, or that they blocked her career, and that she's kind of basically her career is held captive. So that's really like kind of one of the worst conspiracy theory out there. And regarding that, Gabby Def Metal argued that Suzuka, Moa, and Yui are likely still in contact, and I think he is right, because after living such a big adventure together in your formative years, it's very likely that you are going to still be friends, you know, or at least keep in touch. And he argued that today Suzuka and Moa seem to be having a great time in Babymetal, which I think is true, whether like when you see them on stage or backstage, like all of the snippets we have of them, they seem to be in a healthy and happy place. And he said that they would not be having the time of their life if someone close to them was suffering because of the people who are employing them. And I thought that it was an excellent point, because if we imagine that Yui is in some kind of painful situation or whatever conspiracy scenario, we would have to think that Suzuka and Moa are out there having fun and not caring about it, which seems unlikely. I kind of pinned the question in my mind of like, does this announcement of Amuse have an impact on her life? Does the end of this contract impact her life at all? I saw some people on Reddit say like, in other words, they are done paying her royalties. So yeah, I'm like, could this mean anything from that? Like, that's the question that I have. There's also the fact that now that she's not bound by a contract, she could have her own social media. I don't think that she would be interested in doing so, given the fact that, like, she stepped away from the spotlight and we haven't seen anything, like, of her. So that's like my guess, but I think it's a very safe guess. But I saw someone say that the number of fake Yui social media is going to boom, and unfortunately I think that it's a possibility, especially today with like AI and how easy it is to create fake images or video of people. And I know that some of them are kind of easy to recognize that they are fake, but at the end of the day, even I sometimes get tricked by an AI image or a video. So, and I'm working in tech, so like anyone can get fooled, you know? I think if you like think about it, you could quickly guess that it's probably like when you see a fake account, it's probably not her. But I just think like it's a little thing where I'm like, okay, careful, you know. I kind of want to focus also on the question, like it's something that I've been wondering a lot, like why aren't some fans letting her go? And even like recently I went on like Reddit and I saw some reactions to the announcements. For example, I saw someone say, I'm both happy and sad that they finally made an official announcement, or maybe it's just a feeling of relief from hoping for something good to happen only to be disappointed. No more rumors, no more speculation, just closure. Honestly, surprised that some people could have still been expecting like a comeback. I'm gonna make a parallel that is going to piss some people off, but I'm sorry, it's what I know. But it's kind of if I was hoping that One Direction were getting back together. I think the chapter is in the past, you know. 5 months ago, I put out a fandom analysis of Babymetal, and I went back to the answer that I collected back then because I remembered that some people had mentioned Yui and some anecdotes around her. And here are some things that I can share that are kind of like relevant to the conversation. I had asked people back then, do you think some negative aspects of idol culture are present in the fandom of Babymetal? So I'm going to share 3 answers to that question that related to Yui. The charge is very strict in relation to what happens to the band. Momoma's very apprehensive when she was announced as a new member for fear that she would be rejected by fans who still love Yui, the member who left in 2017. There is some of that. When Yui resigned from Babymetal, there were a few who turned on the other two and were nasty because they thought Yui was the only member that mattered. People get too obsessed with members. Yui bros are notorious in our community. And I found it crazy that there is a term for this specific group of people. So not the people who are nostalgic of Yui, but the people who are still obsessed with her and like don't take criticism well regarding that matter. I've seen some of these people on Reddit. But the fact that in 2025, like this topic is still existent in the fandom is kind of like insane. I had also asked people, have fans ever misconducted with the members of Babymetal? And here are some answers that I'd like to share. There are some very few that will only post material pre-2018 when Yui Mizuno left. This might be just Team Yui, but the girls in those pictures are of course very young. Never growing up into the young women we know today, think of that what you will. And I don't want to slide down a path that's too dark, but I think it's worth mentioning that it is indeed troubling to see adults obsess over a celebrity that has never been seen publicly past the age of 18. I don't want to expand on that too much, but I'm sure you understand what we can imagine. And I'm not saying like it's like that for everyone or that everyone is weird and dark, but even if it's just casual, like still put that in perspective, it's a little disturbing. Someone said, I haven't been fan long enough to know, but I find the obsession that some fans have about Yuimetal very creepy. She left the band when she was 15 or 16, and yet they keep sharing pics of her captioned as my beautiful angel. Gross. Yeah. Someone said, I suppose when Yui left, people were stupidly rude on social media, although I was in the fandom at the time, so I don't know everything about that. Other than that, I don't think anything too bad has ever happened. I saw someone talk about the fact that they thought it was good that the fans didn't know anything about the girls' lives outside of when they're performing. So while I think it's good to have the option of such great privacy, it also may come with the downside that it will make some fans more interested to know them in parasocial way. Yui is probably the biggest example of this. There hasn't been any public information since her last performance and later statement of quitting the band, and some fans infamously still feel entitled in a way to know about her. I'll expand on that. Yes, when Yuimetal decided to leave Babymetal, people called the new member Momometal a fame robber. I personally haven't seen extreme examples of the hate towards Momometal because I haven't dug at all there, but I use Reddit a lot and I checked a subreddit dedicated to Yui, and indeed I saw some people there be very skeptical or not happy about Momo. Which again, I have a hard time understanding. Maybe it's because I've never experienced like loving a band and having a member being replaced, but yeah. I think that the fact that Yui hasn't been seen since 2017 is the perfect breeding ground for these fans to obsess over her. Because she hasn't had time to do bad things publicly. Not that the other members of Babymetal did, but for example, when Sumetal and Moametal appeared in the 2017 tour without Yui, and there was a lot of frustration from the fans towards the band. Well, even though it's not personal against these two girls, well, there is just like some negative energy from the fans that has crystallized around these two. Not that this frustration was set in stone, but it's an example of something negative surrounding them. Also, Momometal has been a new member in an established band, so some negative energy is always going to happen around that. Yuimetal has not has room for that at all. Like, there's nothing that she has done that has had time to have some negative energy crystallized around her specifically. And there's also the fact that she only has been known as a kid or like a young teenager, and of course as an adult or a fan you are going to be more forgiving, more caring around this type of celebrity. And since she has never been seen as an adult, those are the only feelings that people can specifically feel toward her, which I think is unfortunately the perfect breeding ground for all this kind of weird energy to like flourish. So, what now for these obsessed fans? The part of the fandom of Babymetal that still has an intense nostalgia for Yui is very puzzling to me. On one hand, I understand this feeling of nostalgia. On the other, I see it for what it is. If someone is that evolved emotionally with a celebrity, it often means that they are quite lonely in their personal life. And then there's also the frustration and kind of the okay, chill energy, you know. And regarding this link between loneliness and celebrity, I'd like to read you some parts of a paper I found. It is called The Relationship Between Loneliness with Celebrity Worship, and it is by Diva Juniarti and Agustina. I will leave you the link in the description, but there are just some parts that I wanted to highlight. And she did her the research is done specifically on the fans of BTS who interact with the band on Twitter, but there are some points that I think are relevant to the Yui situation. So this research examined a relationship between loneliness with celebrity worship among adolescents using BTS fan accounts on social media Twitter. This study involved 200 respondents consisting of 193 females and 7 males who had moderate and high levels of loneliness and celebrity worship. Celebrity worship is a type of abnormal relationship between fans and idols which consists of addiction and absorption. Having a celebrity idol is a natural thing for every individual, especially teenagers. This is because during the period of adolescent development, an individual begins to recognize his idol figure. They are in a period of searching for identity and experimenting with various roles they get. At this time, teenagers need a personal bond with a model figure that can be exemplified in real terms, one of which, apart from their parents, is their celebrity idol. I've seen this also a lot with adults, and I feel like in this age where religion is less important in most people's life than it could have been some decades or centuries ago, the very intense love that you would feel for a religious figure kind of transfigured on celebrities, which is why I think we also see a lot of adults obsessing over celebrities. I also think that the pandemic of 2020 really accentuated the loneliness that a lot of people feel, and it objectively made a lot of people lonely. So I think it's why we see celebrity worship on the rise. Obsessive behavior shown by fans sometimes makes people stay away from them and avoid building relationships with K-pop fans. This will result in fans feeling rejected and isolated, as well as causing discomfort in their social environment to interact with each other. They will divert this discomfort to something that makes them comfortable, namely through celebrity worship. And I thought this was interesting because I think that the rejection that casual fans are going to show for the obsessed Yui fans is only accentuating their obsession with Yui and their desire to only interact with each other, hence the creation of a subreddit only dedicated to Yui. And it's going to be a place where they are only together and they kind of accentuate each other's obsession. Individuals who feel lonely are found to use social media more than those who do not feel it. And here are some of the conclusion of the specific research they did. So they found out that if the loneliness score of the people they interrogated was high, their celebrity worship score was also high. And on the other hand, if the loneliness score was low, the celebrity worship score was also low. The more fans engage with their idol, the more the communication can feel like interpersonal communication with intimacy, even though it is only one directional. So for example, they were talking about the fact that these BTS fans on Twitter were interacting a lot with BTS posts, but the other way around was not true. And I just highlighted this part also because in this situation with Yui, there hasn't even have this possibility of the fans interacting with her. Not only because the girls never had social media of their own, so there's not this possibility, but also she hasn't even been present to concerts or in music videos, so literally no interactions at all, even one-dimensional, which makes it even a bigger mystery that this parasocial relationship keeps going, To me, it almost feels like we reached the level of not worshipping a celebrity, but worshipping a fictional character. So regarding these fans, I sincerely hope that this statement is going to help them let Yui go and find other celebrities or topics to be interested in. So, the myth that Yuimetal would be returning to Babymetal is definitely dead and buried, even though it was very obvious to a lot of people and it has been crystallized when Mizunoyui joined the band. Now it's obvious she is not going to come back to the entertainment industry. And I sincerely hope that the people who are still obsessed with her and suffer from her absence and suffer from their isolation even in the fandom of Babymetal are going to have a simpler time letting her go and feel better. So let me know what you think, please. I know that this is kind of a tired topic, but I am really interested in parasocial relationships that people form with celebrities. And with the artists that I've covered on my channel, I haven't seen like a very prevalent case or example of that, but the Yui example was very strong, so I thought it was worth mentioning. And I also wanted to talk about the paper, like retelling the research between celebrity worship and loneliness. So I had a lot of thoughts. I did not make like the most organized video, but I wanted to share a bit about this conversation. So please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you thought this video was interesting, like it and share it with a friend. If you want to support my channel, please subscribe and activate the bell. It helps a lot. I am almost at 10,000 followers. I was your host Leo. This was some thoughts around the Yuimetal situation, and I will see you very soon. Bye!